How is a pine cone like a quilt? One similarity is that they both have patterns of repeating shapes. Lots of natural objects have patterns. Drawing nature blueprints can help you discover and observe these patterns. To get some idea of how that might work, let's talk to our friend Splash.
Hello, Splash. Thank you so much for joining us today. It's so good to see you. I have some questions. Could you tell us about your job and what kind of work you do?
I work for Nico Corporation, who manufactures broilers. Broilers are used to cook hamburgers in restaurants like Dairy Queen or Burger King. I'm a design engineer, so I use modeling software to make changes to the product design. Using the model, I create documentation for the people manufacturing the parts. Also, I create drawings to show how to make the parts.
Wow, that is fascinating, Splash. Could you tell us more about how you use blueprints in your work?
Blueprints are a way to communicate design. They allow me to get the parts made at our local shop or a factory miles away.
Could you show us some examples of your blueprints and some of the things that you would include in your blueprints?
Here's an example of the blueprints for a machine that melts cheese. This first page shows the whole machines with views from the top, end, and side. Here's an example of an exploded or expanded view. It shows that one part is made up of other smaller parts. Here's another example of an exploded view. Here's an example of a detail view. It shows one of the smaller parts of the machine. Here's another detail view with views of the top, side, and end of the part. And here's one more example. This is a clutch, a piece that is used in various machines. This diagram shows how the different smaller parts go together to make it up. It's an exploded view.
Wow, blueprints are so cool. Splash, I can see that blueprints use a lot of different views to show information about machines and the parts that make them up. But besides machines like broilers, do you ever use blueprints for other objects?
Well, this past summer I created a blueprint to pattern a quilt. I knew my quilt was going to be made up of a pattern of smaller parts that repeated. I decided SolidWorks, the design software I use for work, would be helpful in making the pattern. In the software, I first made the parts of a quilt, a triangle and a trapezoid. I then used these shapes to create a square. Then I put multiple squares together to make the larger pattern of the quilt. Here's those smaller parts, the triangles and trapezoids cut out of the fabric. And here's a photo of them being put together. And here's the finished product.
Wow, what a neat quilt. It's so interesting to see how blueprints can be used to diagram so many different things. Thank you for joining us, Splash. We really appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Like how engineers and architects make blueprints of machines and buildings, you can make blueprints of natural objects. Drawing the object from multiple angles can show more of what you notice. Try using top, side, and end views. Many natural objects have patterns of repeating parts. You can use detail and exploded views to show these parts. Here's a diagram I drew of a flower. Drawing it helps me focus on just one part of the flower. Here's an exploded view. It shows how the parts of the flower fit together. Instead of drawing the petals again and again, making a diagram lets me spend more time observing. And I end up with a nature journaling page that shows the object with more clarity and precision than is possible if I try to just draw a big picture of the whole thing. Diagrams can help us notice and think about patterns. What patterns will you notice in your natural object? What might be some possible explanations for these patterns? Where are there exceptions to these patterns? why do you think those exceptions might have occurred? Are you ready to try diagramming? First, find a natural object that has patterns of repeating parts. You might try a pine cone, various kinds of flowers, or a fern frond. Then, make a diagram to show different views of each repeating part. Next, look at how the different parts connect and fit in to make the object as a whole. Use pictures and words to show how the different parts fit together. After that, you can record additional observations using words, pictures, and numbers. Don't forget to ask questions about the patterns and exceptions to the patterns that you notice. All right, go nature journal. What patterns will you discover as you make a diagram?